with a flexible data plan starting at only $20 a month.
You said that Amy ruined your life, Gareth Pursehouse, but that's not true. You managed to do that all by yourself. What is true is that you fractured my life. Part of me is buried with my daughter. Every day is a battle. It's a battle I am determined to win.
And you're going to hear from witnesses who say they saw the defendant driving very aggressively, cutting people off, almost hitting people, jumping over a median, to then block Mr. Herring in. You're not going to hear any evidence that she's law enforcement of any kind. Her authority comes solely from audacity.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. Ahead this hour, more legal trouble for Sean Diddy Combs as a new accuser comes forward claiming that he raped her. Now, she's accused of plotting the murder for hire of her former son-in-law. Now Donna Adelson is asking the court for a psych evaluation. And the district attorney in the Karen Reed case says he's mystified why 2 federal agencies are looking into his local murder case. Well, our Court TV cameras are covering the biggest cases across the nation. We'll have those other stories for you in just a moment. But again, our cameras are covering the biggest cases across the nation. The hearing for the mother accused of locking her son in an 8x8 box has been postponed. It was sentencing day for Gareth Pursehouse in the Hollywood Obsession murder trial. But we are going to begin with our newest trial. Here on Court TV, opening statements began in the car crash vigilante trial in Georgia. We showed it to you right here on Court TV, and Court TV legal correspondent Shanley Painter is here with a debrief.
Michael, the state's case against Hannah Payne is now underway, and it started on the first day of testimony with a packed courtroom with the family from both sides, from Hannah Payne's family to the family of Kenneth Herring in the gallery. And in the opening statements, the prosecution and the defense painted very different pictures of what they say happened May 7th, 2019. Prosecutor Bonnie Smith began by taking the jury to the scene of the alleged crime. Let's watch.
Defendant Hannah Renee Payne had the audacity to chase, corner, detain, assault, shoot, and kill an unarmed 62-year-old Kenneth Herring who was sitting in his own car. All because she didn't like his driving. I will shoot you. She's standing right up on Mr. Herring with a gun in her hand. The witnesses will tell you at some point while she's at the door, she takes a gun off her hip and is pointing that gun in the vehicle. She's the aggressor.
Defense attorney Matthew Tucker, in his opening, told the jury his client had good intentions in following Kenneth Herring after the accident and was not the one who actually pulled the trigger. Let's watch.
There's male DNA all over the top of it, as this gun is being pulled back and pushed back at her. And as they're screaming and frantically pulling and bam, this gun goes off. But you're going to hear the forensic examiner between the two. Now this bullet came in stuck at close range. It's not way over here pointing. It's at close range. And it's at an angle slightly right to left. That's why the male DNA is on the top of the gun. That is why you see her pull her arm back when it goes off, because it's being twisted to a point. And he's trying to shoot somebody or shoot her. It's not just struggling with the gun. It's an angle of the gun that's being pointed. As he grabbed her and started pulling her in, and a weapon is pulled out and it's pointed and shot. She picked up that phone immediately and told him, my God, he just shot himself with my gun.
After the opening statements, the prosecution called its first witness, the younger sister of the victim, Vicki Herring, who told this jury that her brother was severely diabetic and was insulin dependent. Prosecutors trying to explain away his behavior there at the scene right out of the gate. And then their second witness was the eyewitness of the crash and the incident, Terry Robinson, who was a correctional officer and had experience at the prison infirmary. And he talks about his observations of Kenneth Herring at the first scene before he fled. Let's watch.
Physically, the scene that he was, again, out of it, like I said, I noticed his eyes were a glassy effect. Again, and again, not being a professional doctor or anything, just saying that was he going through a diabetic situation or whatever. I didn't smell any alcohol on him.
And, of course, the jury that is taking in this evidence was finally seated today. There are 14, 11 men, 3 women, 10 appear to be African-American, 1 Caucasian, 1 appears to be Hispanic. And, Michael, they were paying astute attention from opening statements and taking lots of notes during the first initial witnesses of testimony. And they will be back inside the courtroom at 9 a.m. tomorrow as the prosecution's case in chief rolls on.
All right. Thank you so much, Chanley Painter. Turning now to California, a former model was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of his ex-girlfriend, a popular Hollywood sex therapist. In September, a jury convicted Gareth Pursehouse on charges of murder with a special circumstance of lying in wait in the death of Dr. Amy Harwick. Well, friends and family of the victim gave emotional impact statements before the judge handed down his sentence.
Do you measure her life through credentials? Undergraduate studies from California Polytechnic State University, through her Master of Arts in Clinical Psychology from Pepperdine, her Doctorate of Human Sexuality from the Institute of Advanced Study of Human Sexuality. Do you measure it through the love of music? Tori Amos, Depeche Mode, Christina Perri, heavy metal. She turned us into metalheads. Do you measure it through accomplishments? She was a model, a therapist, an author, a personal trainer. She released an exercise video. She created podcasts. She wrote magazine articles. She's a fire eater, a dancer, a budding photographer, a bartender. Do we measure her life by what's missing? The 1,000 or so phone calls that haven't come? Empty chairs at family tables, through her visits home and our visits to LA.
In view of the nature and the underlying charges, as well as the conduct engaged in by the defendant, this court is not inclined to impose a probationary sentence and/or make a finding that the imposition of a probationary sentence would be in the interest of judgment. Accordingly, it is a judgment and sentence of this court that the defendant shall be sentenced to a term of life without the possibility of parole with respect to count 1 for the underlying murder charge, coupled with the special circumstance allegation alleged under Penal Code Section 190.2A15.
Turning now to the boy-in-a-box trial in Florida. A hearing for defendant Tracy Ferreter has been pushed back to Friday. Ferreter was scheduled to appear in court this morning after her attorneys filed a motion to declare her indigent. Well, she and her husband Tim were charged with abusing their 13-year-old son by forcing him to live in an 8x8 box in their garage. Well, Tim has already been convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison, followed by 5 years probation. Now, Tracy's hearing will take place Friday morning, and our Court TV cameras will be there to cover it. All right, joining us to discuss, trial attorney and the host of Once Upon a Crime in Hollywood, Kelly Hyman, and trial attorney and former president of the National Bar Association, C.K. Hoffler. Thank you both for joining me on the program tonight. Truly appreciate it. Kelly, I'll start with you, and I want to start with the car crash vigilante trial. Really, it's just an incredibly interesting trial to me, and it got more interesting today after opening statements and the first couple of witnesses, and I'll tell you why. Because what it looks like the defense is doing, when we talk about self-defense in this case, I was struggling to figure out how they were going to get there. Well, what they did was they created a whole nother scene, and in that scene, they suggested that there was a reason for this young lady to fear for her life. That even though she went and followed him, when she got to the scene, she was trying to get him to get out of the car and talk on the phone and get back to the other scene. But then he revs his car. Then he hits her car, and that puts her on high alert. That's when the gun comes out and a new confrontation ensues. So your thoughts on whether that reimagining or retelling of the events is going to be effective in establishing self-defense?
Defense attorney, that's what they need to do. They need to show that something other than what the prosecution alleged happened. Ultimately, it will be based on the evidence presented to the jury and the facts presented to them and what they truly believe happened and made a determination on that. But the state has laid out a strong case, has painted a very strong picture. However, the defendant is trying to argue that what allegedly the prosecution contend actually did not happen. But the state has done a great job of telling a story. And as I stated before, ultimately it'll be up to the jury based on the facts and determination on what they believe ultimately happened that day.
Now, CK, the other eyewitness to this, Terry Robinson, took the stand. And what we found out on cross was something that I thought should have been brought out on direct, but it wasn't. But basically, what we find out is why she followed this guy. You know, one of the big questions when you hear about the facts of this case is, well, why did she ever go after him in the first place? And I thought that would hurt the defense's case, just the fact that you had to ask that question. But we find out that he tells her, in his written statement to police, he tells her, go, go, go after him, get a picture of the license plate. So now we know why she left the scene and followed him. I mean, you still have the problem of her actually stopping him and getting out of the car, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, now we know why she followed him. Is that helpful, or I feel it's helpful, is it helpful to the defense's case?
Well, I think it's helpful just a little bit, Michael. And the reason why I say that is because she could have gotten his license plate. If that was the directive, there are many ways she could have gotten the license plate number and all that information. But what she chose to do was be very aggressive, and she was the aggressor in this instance. And I think a Clayton County jury is not going to buy the explanation that all of these other things happened, because she intentionally and deliberately got out of her car and confronted him. See, that's the difference with this case. She didn't just take a picture of the license plate. She got out and she confronted him. And everything else that happened arguably is because she was the aggressor. At least that's the strong case that the state has laid out. So I think it only helps the defense very little.
All right, let's talk about that jury that's listening to this evidence. We have 10 African Americans on the jury. There's 11 men, 2 women, 1 white and 1 Hispanic. So let me ask you, Kelly, that type, you know, when we talk about jury of her peers, that may not be considered specifically a jury of her peers, certainly people from where she lives, so they might have sort of the same mindset. But what do you think about that jury in a case like this and how they might be hearing the evidence?
If you believe in the jury system, then the fact that the juries will listen to the evidence presented to them by the state and the defense, and based on the facts and evidence, will make a determination of whether she is guilty or innocent. You are entitled to jurors by your peers and what is representative in the community as well. So ultimately, it will be up to them based on what they hear and what they realize happened during this matter.
CK, I got to say, I think there is an argument to be made that where you are in life and your race, your age, your color, gender, I think those are all issues in this trial. As a matter of fact, the defense brought it up in their opening statement, the idea that a lot of what she did was a function of her being 21 and young, and how she sort of interpreted the events of that day and the decisions that she made. I think race and gender can be put in that as well. Do you think this jury might hear things differently? What do you think about the makeup of the jury?
Well, I think the makeup of the jury should give her grave concern for a number of reasons. We're in Clayton County, Georgia, firstly. But secondly, and I imagine that there were Batson challenges that were made in voir dire, but I don't know that for a fact. But if there were no Batson challenges, or even if there were Batson challenges, this is this happened in Clayton County, and so this is a Clayton County jury, and this is a true reflection of a Clayton County jury. I think she should be concerned about this jury based on the fact that I don't believe the story that's been represented in opening from the defense makes a lot of sense. So then when you're looking at it, you see this older gentleman and this young girl who appears to be the aggressor, and he ends up dead for no reason whatsoever. So I think that's going to be difficult for this jury, any jury, quite frankly, but particularly this jury in Clayton County, to really accept that explanation unless there's some remarkable evidence that completely exonerates her or that creates such a strong reasonable doubt that they will look at these facts differently.
All right, and quickly, I want to turn to the Gareth Pursehouse sentencing today, sentenced to life in prison without parole. Quickly, Kelly Hyman, really no surprise there. I think ultimately at the trial, a lot of what they argued was going and thinking about the ultimate sentencing in the case, that he went there to kill himself. He really, and she ended up falling over or jumping over. Those, I think, were targeted to maybe get him an opportunity at parole at some point. Didn't work.
Right. The judge listened to impact statements, which are going to be key in these matters of how it affects people. And ultimately, based on that and the law, made a determination that he should not be entitled to parole, which the judge made it on the facts that he had and also the evidence. And that was the right call.
Yeah, no question, and especially with that special circumstance of lying in wait, I think that was certainly not favorable, to say the least, for Mr. Pursehouse. All right, stand by, ladies. I do have to take a break. Folks, coming up, the legal team for a Florida grandmother charged in the murder of her former son-in-law wants an emergency psych evaluation for their client. Donna Adelson's team says that she grows weaker and weaker due to her, quote, inhumane confinement conditions. Where have we heard that before? We break down the emergency motion after the break. And then later in our talkback segment, YouTube momfluencer Ruby Frankie's husband has filed for divorce as the evidence in their child abuse case continues to pile up. Find us on social media. Let us know what you think of the latest development in that case. I'm going to share some of your comments later on in the show. Keep it here on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, cold-blooded killer or cop conspiracy. Karen Reed will bring you the latest legal twists and turns in this bizarre case, including new developments surrounding the investigation. Plus, Gareth Pursehouse was convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend. Today, he learned how long he'll spend in prison. Our experts break down his sentence and what legal options he has left.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
We have new details in the case against a woman accused of conspiring with her son to kill her former son-in-law. 73-year-old Donna Adelson is charged with arranging the murder of Florida law professor Dan Markell. After her arrest, officers carried out a search of her home, and they were looking for electronics, and they seized 2 iPhones and an iPad, and they are combing through them for information relevant to the murder of Dan Markell and her attempt to leave the country. Court TV has also obtained a copy of a motion from the Adelson's attorneys asking for an emergency psych evaluation and for their client to be placed on house arrest. They claim her rights are being violated and she isn't able to properly prepare for trial under her current conditions. They also say she is being treated cruelly, detailing an incident where staff allegedly told Donna, quote, she would learn fancy white lady murderers have no rights here. Now, we covered the trial of her son, Charlie Adelson, here on Court TV. And you may remember Donna's name came up multiple times throughout that trial.
I told my mom, I said, listen, I'm going to tell you something, but I never want to talk about it again. I never want you to talk to me about it on the phone. Don't talk about it anywhere. And please, whatever you do not say anything to Dad. Do not say anything to Wendy. Do not try to make me go to the police, because I'm not going.
You approached me on Alton Road. You handed me an article from the newspaper about my ex-son-in-law. You told me I need to call you and help your friend who was in prison. Now, at the time you did that, I didn't understand what you were talking about. I didn't call you back. Then you mailed me a threatening letter. Then you send me a text message to my phone that says I'm not taking you seriously. So I am taking you seriously. And I really want you to listen to me.
Donna is the overbearing matriarch who nags everyone to death about whatever it is that's currently on her. I call it the wheel. The wheel's turning all the time, right? And Wendy getting away from Dan Markell and moving to South Florida was number one on the wheel. Donna enlists the defendant to go in and fix it, to solve the problem.
I have spoken to 10 or 12 people who are close friends of mine, telling them about this and basically picking their brains and asking them what I should do, because I don't know your friend.
I believe his parents or his mom might have washed the money.
You mean like physically wash the money?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, the prosecution is on board with Adelson getting a psych evaluation. And a motion hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, which is the same day she's set to be arraigned. All right, let's bring back in our guests. Still with us, trial attorneys Kelly Hyman and C.K. Hoffler. C.K., I'll start with you. The chances of her getting house arrest, I mean, clearly slim and none. But when is somebody going to tell these folks of means that when you go to jail, it's not going to be like being at home? It's going to be a little difficult. Let me just say some of the things that are going on. They're claiming that she doesn't have access to blankets, clothes, toiletries. She's been denied water at times. She was actually placed in a psych unit and in isolation. She hasn't been able to reach her counsel. That could be an issue. So what do you think about these things that they're claiming? It's not the first time, won't be the last time we hear these types of complaints.
No, absolutely, Michael. These complaints are actually fairly common, especially amongst people who are privileged. I mean, let's just face it. But what do I think about these complaints? I think that if you engage in certain activities, if you're being accused of murder or being part of a plot or conspiring to murder someone, you've got to recognize that you are going to be treated like every other defendant. And unless you're being denied access to your counsel, I agree, that could be an issue. Everything else is exactly what other potential defendants and people who are arrested face. And unfortunately, that's the reality of our criminal justice system. So there can't be any favorable treatment because you are privileged or you come from a certain background or you have means if you're being arrested and if you're being tried for very, very serious and heinous crimes. So I think it's unfortunate, but that's just life when you engage in certain activities or accused of engaging in certain activities.
Yes, she still remains accused of those crimes. Let's be sure to mention that. Kelly Hyman, they want a psych evaluation. One of the reasons why they say so is apparently she's been sitting naked in her cell, and I think that's by choice. I think there's issues with access to clothes, obviously, but she's sitting in, and it's due to the inhumane conditions, et cetera, affecting her mentally. I just want to be clear. First of all, the state is agreeing to it, so it'll probably happen. But this is about, more so about her competence as opposed to accountability, correct?
Competence is key. It's key the fact whether someone has the right state of mind, whether they're competent at a particular time. And I definitely think that's going to be key in this matter, potentially based on the fact that it's brought up that she needs to be psych evaluated. So it'd be interesting to see if the judge agrees that their psych evaluation should go through, what exactly the psych evaluation determines in regards to her state of mind and her psychological being.
And CK, there'd be no reason for the judge to deny it at this point. Both parties want it. Surprising the state didn't have a problem with it. I guess they want to make sure that she's all there if they move forward with this case. And as it continues to move forward, they have to make sure she understands the charges and what's going on in her case.
No, absolutely. Both sides agree to it. It shouldn't be a problem. But the judge probably wants to satisfy himself and make sure that there is no chance that she's faking. And I'm not suggesting that she is, but he wants to make sure that indeed this is appropriate under these circumstances. And because if, for instance, he denies this, that would be an appealable issue for sure if she is ultimately convicted. And I think that this is an easy one for the judge, but I think the judge wants to make sure that there's not anything nefarious. After all, she did appear in a lot of her son's cases. You showed the footage of that, and she does seem like she's pretty cagey, manipulative. At least that's the evidence that came in her son's trial.
Yeah, and Kelly Hyman, they went in, they got an iPad and 2 iPhones, and they're scouring those two. Based on what we've seen, not only from this case, but from other cases, there's probably a treasure trove of information on those little mini computers.
We have to wait and see ultimately what is on there and what it entails. But absolutely, that is potentially key evidence of what was said, what was communicated, whether it's a text message or message. It'll be really interesting to see ultimately what comes out of what were on those devices. We're just going to have to wait this one out.
Yeah, you know, who she contacts, what she might be searching on the internet, what type of information she may have saved on there, who she's been talking to, what she's been saying. It's all going to be laid out there for them. All right, ladies, stand by. It's time for a break. Folks, still ahead. Another lawsuit has been filed against music producer Sean Diddy Combs. Now a woman is accusing him and 2 other men of raping her when she was just 17 years old. More on the allegations coming up next.
I'm Chanley Painter in Clayton County, Georgia for the car crash vigilante trial. This is Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Topping our other legal news from across the nation, another lawsuit has been filed against music producer Sean Diddy Combs. The new filing accuses Combs and 2 other men of raping a then 17-year-old girl in a New York City recording studio 20 years ago. According to the civil suit, Harvey Pierre, the former president of Combs' Bad Boy Entertainment, met the teenager in Michigan, and then he flew with her on a private plane to meet Combs. Well, the alleged victim, who goes by Jane Doe, says she was assaulted more than once during that trip. Now, this is the 5th lawsuit alleging sexual assault by Combs, who continues to deny the allegations against him. The first lawsuit was brought by Combs' longtime girlfriend, singer Cassie. Cassie, whose name is Cassandra Ventura, settled the lawsuit just 1 day after it was filed. And in New York, in the assault trial of former Marvel actor Jonathan Majors, his accuser testified today that he was prone to fits of rage that escalated in the months before his arrest last spring. And in one such fit, she testified, Grace Jabari said she recorded Majors berating her for coming home tipsy, telling her that he was a great man and that she needed to live up to the standards of the spouses of other famous men like Coretta Scott King and Michelle Obama. Majors is accused of physically assaulting Jabari during a fight over a text that he received from another woman. Now to Massachusetts and the latest in the Karen Reed case. A federal probe is now underway into possible corruption in that case. Reed is accused of running over her boyfriend, a Boston police officer, and leaving him to die in the snow. She claims other officers killed John O'Keefe and that they're trying to pin it on her.
It feels we're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do. Speaking to the Boston Globe, Norfolk District Attorney Michael Morrissey said that he's mystified as to why the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Boston FBI are looking into the case. Morrissey said, quote, they don't have any jurisdiction over a state murder trial, so this is an extraordinary step on their part. I'm not worried because I have the utmost confidence in what we've done and what people have told us. Morrissey also said his office has not received a target letter from any federal law enforcement agency. Last month, residents of the community where the crime happened voted to have the police department audited. And in San Diego, police are searching for a group of people who swarmed a FedEx driver who was making deliveries and robbed him. It happened right in front of a homeowner who was waiting for a package to arrive. Scripps News San Diego has this story.
San Miguel Ranch last Thursday evening. Moments before this blue car stopped alongside this FedEx truck, Jane had gotten a delivery from a UPS truck.
Came out and I noticed that the FedEx truck was 1 house away, and that was what I'd been waiting for all day, for a big package.
Jane went inside her home, but quickly a commotion drew her out.
There were 4 males, gloves, masks, gray hoodies, like an assembly line emptying the FedEx truck. I just couldn't believe it was happening.
The driver would later tell Jane the thieves found him in the back of the truck.
He said they held up something to his face that was metal and sharp, put his hands up and stepped back.
As the robbers emptied the truck,
You guys are on camera, just FYI.
Jane yelled from her porch, warning the robbers that police were on their way.
It made me angry that this was happening right in front of my house.
Jane believes the thieves were startled by her yelling, and they began stuffing the packages into the car. After they peeled off, she noticed that 3 of the packages had been accidentally shoved out of the car. One of those packages was that package she had been waiting for, an electric scooter, a Christmas gift for her son. After the car took off, Jane ran out and found out.
He was shook up, but he was okay.
The FedEx driver was unhurt. We've learned the stunning robbery may not be an isolated case. Chula Vista police say they're looking into whether it's linked to similar cases in San Diego. Back in Chula Vista,
They picked the wrong neighborhood.
Jane is hoping some extra clues could help break the case. Her neighborhood includes the home of missing mother Maya Miliete, her husband charged with her murder.
With all the hoopla that went around there, everybody put up cameras.
Jane says neighbors have turned over extensive video to investigators to help track down the robbers.
What if next time they hurt him or hurt someone else?
Michael Chen, ABC 10 News.
All right, still with us, trial attorneys Kelly Hyman and C.K. Hoffler. And C.K., this is not the first time I've seen this. We've had video of this happening in a number of states. And it's a scary trend, but, you know, these guys who do this, there's just another iteration of the porch pirates, right? If you can get one package or a couple of packages from a neighborhood, you can get 5, 10, 15 packages from the truck, and there is no security.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a very, very disturbing trend, Michael. It happens a lot in we've seen it happen in the Atlanta metropolitan area. We see it happen throughout the country. And the lack of security, and this is something that FedEx is going to, and other delivery companies are going to have to explore, the protection and security of their drivers, because they are really just sitting out there and potential victims. We've seen cases. There was a case in Mississippi where a FedEx driver was chased in a neighborhood because some neighbors didn't think that he should be in that neighborhood. So there's absolutely no protection for these drivers, and that's something that these companies have got to explore.
Yeah, and I got to admire, I don't know whether to actually admire or be afraid for that homeowner who came out and tried to confront them. But thankfully, you know, they're concerned citizens, and we do have the video, so hopefully that will lead to some arrests in that case. I want to turn now, Kelly, to the Sean Diddy Combs situation. I mean, this thing is growing like a forest blaze. More and more accusations coming out, another lawsuit filed with some really terrible accusations, and quite frankly, a trend seems to be forming in that situation. Your thoughts on the latest lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs?
Well, as you know, in a court of law, you are innocent until proven guilty, and that these are allegations. But those are serious allegations coming from someone, a Jane Doe, that's asserting some serious claims. But ultimately, if this case does go to trial, it'll be up to the jury based on the facts and the evidence that they hear and whether he is innocent or guilty in this matter. But this is a serious allegations and some serious charges against him.
Yeah, CK, you know, you have to wonder where there's smoke, there might be fire. This is very similar. What's going on here, or what's alleged to have gone on here, very similar to what Cassie was claiming. She filed her lawsuit. That thing was settled the next day. They didn't take even a moment to deal with that one. Do you suspect the same thing might happen here?
I don't think it will happen here in that way, because there are too many lawsuits that have been filed. And so if this were the second lawsuit, perhaps. But this is the 5th lawsuit. And so I think that Sean Diddy Combs is concerned that there's an impression out there that he's just willing to pay to resolve these cases, whether there's any truth to them or not. So I don't think there's going to be a swift or quick resolution to this lawsuit, because he even was quoted as saying enough is enough. So there's an indication that he's prepared to fight it, because he vehemently denies all of the allegations in all the cases. And I know as a civil trial lawyer principally that a lot of times cases settle not because of allegations of guilt, not because the person feels that they're guilty, but because of the business ramifications, the consequences, and the need to just close out a matter because of the impact. And these cases have certainly had a very negative impact on him, without a doubt.
Yeah, no question. And, you know, he's never liked to let these things sort of, you know, get into the media very often. You know, they sort of get swept away very, very quickly. But if he says enough is enough, this is one he might put his foot down and decide to fight it. Again, we'll have to see how this one proceeds. All right, we do have to take a break, folks. Still ahead in our Talkback segment, we're going to be looking at a case that's coming out of the YouTube momfluencer, Ruby Franke. She and her husband have filed for divorce as the evidence in her child abuse case continues to pile up. Find us on social media and let us know what you think of this latest development. We'll share some of your comments on the other side of the break. Keep it here on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, cold-blooded killer or cop conspiracy. Karen Reed will bring you the latest legal twists and turns in this bizarre case, including new developments surrounding the investigation. Plus, Gareth Pursehouse was convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend. Today, he learned how long he'll spend in prison. Our experts break down his sentence and what legal options he has left.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
It is time now for today's Talkback segment. Each day, we gather your comments and questions from our social media and respond on the show. In an interview with Court TV's Vinny Politan, the attorney representing the husband of the YouTube creator accused of child abuse revealed new details about the couple's relationship and pending divorce. Ruby Franke is known as the star of the since-canceled YouTube channel 8 Passengers and had millions following her. She had tips on lifestyle and on parenting. And she was arrested in August after her 12-year-old son escaped to a neighbor's home, injured and asking for food and water. Ruby and her husband had been separated, and according to his attorney, Ruby had moved in with a woman named Jody Hildebrand.
He was just shocked to find out what had happened to his kids while they're in Ivins with Mom and Jody. And that was on top of him already sort of being traumatized by being instructed by Jody, who he thought was his very professional mental health professional, advising him to stay away from his family and absent himself, isolate himself from even his extended family, siblings, parents, and most specifically, stay away from his kids and stay away from his wife, Ruby, not come home and only speak to Ruby when she asked to speak to him.
Wow.
Which ended up being 3 or 4 times a year in that year, and then to find out that he'd just simply been misled, was being told everything was blissful at home. So imagine his shock and dismay and surprise when he hears on the news about the goings-on in Ivins and the injuries and damages to his children.
So for today's Talkback question, we get your reaction to these new developments in this very interesting case. Still with us, trial attorneys Kelly Hyman and C.K. Hoffler. All right, our first comment comes from Kathy. Kathy says, he said he moved out because the therapist advised him to? I'm sorry, I'm not buying that. What husband, father would do that? Now, before I get your comments on that, ladies, I do want to play some sound. This is a guy, he hosts a podcast called Mormon Stories. And again, this was in Utah, and they were sort of surrounded around that faith. Dr. John Dellin has this to say as to why he thinks Kevin might do just that. Let's listen.
If you want to understand why Kevin would allow these children to be taken away and not to see his kids for multiple months, it's because Jody Hildebrand had convinced Ruby and had threatened Kevin that he was an evil, sick, perverted, dirty person, and that if he didn't obey and comply with everything that Ruby and really Jody demanded, that he would be turned in, just like Adam Paul Steed, who you had in your program, faced as well. Once Jody gets her hooks into the wife and into the marriage, the husband literally fears that he's going to be turned into police as a pedophile.
C.K. Hoffler, thoughts?
Well, I don't know the circumstances surrounding that, but in terms of that statement, in a domestic case that has a lot of twists and turns and that is evidently very nasty, I think it's very difficult to accept that because the court can intervene. If he had a concern, certainly, that he was going to be turned in and accused of being a pedophile, and they're in a domestic dispute, he could have sought refuge with the court to try to ensure that he could see his children. So that doesn't resonate well with me. I don't think that it doesn't really make sense to me. I understand the fear that he might have, but by the same token, he could have availed himself and used the courts to try to address that issue if he was very concerned about that. Because not seeing your kids is really very, very difficult to explain away.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask of a father, so I agree with you. Something else is going on behind the scenes there. Our next comment comes from Barbara. Barbara says, and this is just in part of what she wrote, Jodi Hildebrand did this because she wanted Ruby to move in with her, which she did. Kevin endured this in hopes of reconciling their marriage. It's also twisted and weird. And I think that's the truest comment about this whole case, Kelly. This whole thing is twisted and weird. The thing that concerns most folks is that the way they were treating the kids was an issue, and he was around for that. But then this Jodi person gets involved. One has to wonder what her influence was or what she was trying to accomplish with this whole thing. But for the father to walk away that way, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth as a father.
The best interest of the child, that's key for a parent, and it's something that the courts look upon of what is going to be the best interest for the children. And I think that is key. With all the twists and the turns, it's hard to decipher what exactly happened, but the most important thing is the children, that they are well taken care of, that they are not malnutrition or have any kind of issues, whether psychological, emotional, and I think that's important for the children, and that is key in this matter.
Yeah, it is key, and we know that that is actually the case. Our next comment references that. It's from Sharon. She says, an adult child reported concerns. This father was negligent. Now, what she's talking about is once they moved in with Jodi Hildebrand, the family, the children and the mother, one of the sons got away, went to a neighbor's house, and he had wounds on him. It looked like he had been bound. And that's sort of the genesis of why they decided to look closer. The oldest daughter, she said, hey, go check on these kids. You know, they're being left alone for long periods of time. There might be some issues there. She wanted a welfare check. And when they did, they found out that there were some weird things going on there, CK.
Well, and that is very troubling, very disturbing. But that does not absolve the father from his responsibility to check on his own children. And I think that's what's very difficult in this case. If he suspected in any way that his children were being abused, he had a duty to check in on them. Even if he didn't suspect that they were being abused, to stop seeing the children for such a long period of time with these thoughts that, the mother may manipulate the process, that's really not a good enough excuse to stop seeing your children and stop caring for your children in the way that they need, especially when there's separation or divorce, especially when there's a domestic issue. They need both parents more than ever when there's that turmoil going on. And I agree with Kelly. What's in the best interest of the children? That's what's key.
Yeah, no doubt. And then, this investigation, that could get to the heart of what was really going on there and why things ended up the way they did and really what ended up happening to those children. All right, thanks to CK Hoffler and Kelly Hyman for joining us for this hour. Truly appreciate it, ladies. We'll see you again soon. Folks, stick around because coming up next, we're going to review the 3 things that we've learned today in the cases we've been covering from coast to coast right here on Court TV. Welcome back. Here are 3 things that we've learned on this busy Wednesday. First, testimony got underway this afternoon in the car crash vigilante trial out of Georgia. 25-year-old Hannah Payne is charged with shooting a man after he left the scene of an accident. Well, prosecutors say they'll play a 911 call where you can hear the defendant ordering the victim to get out of his vehicle moments before he was shot. Second, the former model convicted of killing Hollywood sex therapist Amy Harwick will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Gareth Pursehouse was sentenced this morning in Los Angeles for the murder of his former girlfriend, and he is not eligible for parole. And third, Donna Adelson says she's being mistreated in jail after her arrest for the murder for hire plot against her former son-in-law. Adelson was arrested at the Miami airport as she was about to board a flight to Vietnam, and she didn't have a return ticket. Now she's asking the court to release her to house arrest and to give her a psych evaluation. All right, I'm Michael Ayala. It's been a pleasure being with you tonight. Thank you so much for being with me. Coming up next on Judgment with Ashley Banfield. As shocking as the brutal double murder committed by a vampire-obsessed teenager was, nobody expected him to plead guilty at the start of his trial, leaving the monumental question of how young is too young for the death penalty. Then ahead at 8 p.m. Eastern, tune into Closing Arguments. Vinnie Politan is digging into the latest with the Karen Reed case and 2 possible federal investigations into how the state has handled the whole thing. That's next here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
You started swinging the crowbar on the now subject. That you really felt?
It was a rush to actually
okay,
feel the fact that I was taking life. Because that's just like the old philosophy about if you take life, you become a god for a split second. But if I was a god, I wouldn't technically be here, would I?
Eustis, Florida. It's a town that sits on a lake of the same name, about 40 miles north of Orlando. Once known for its citrus crops, the quiet night here was shattered on November 25th, 1996. What happened was almost unheard of in Eustis. Murder. Even more alarming, a double murder in the home of Richard Wendorf and Naomi Ruth Queen. They're found bludgeoned to death in a grisly scene, and the suspects? Vampires. Not just any vampires, teenage vampires.
Eustis, Florida is a small town. People had 5-acre lots, and it was a quiet area. Richard Wendorf and his wife, Ruth Queen, they had built the house themselves.
There were 4 people living there at that time, the husband and the wife and 2 daughters. Jennifer, the older girl, came home that evening to find that her parents had been killed.
Where is your emergency? My emergency is in Eustis, Florida. I need 2 ambulances. My mother and my father just been killed. I just walked in the door. I don't know what happened. They are dead.
The crime scene was horrific.
The initial officer got on scene and came across the radio screaming, hardly legible. We knew we had a homicide at that point. Mr. Wendorf had been struck multiple times on the head with a blunt object determined to be a crowbar. Mrs. Wendorf was found lying face down, and she too had been beaten with a crowbar.
Are you there alone? I have no idea. There could be someone in the house. I mean, nobody came there with you. I don't know where my sister is. She's gone. What do you mean? Does she live there with you? She should be here. She's only 15 years old, and she's gone. Okay.
According to our complainant, which was Heather's sister, her sister was missing. We didn't know if Heather had been abducted, taken by force, or if this had been something she was involved in. We need to find Heather.
A friend told us that Heather was arranging to go with these 4 teens who'd come down from Kentucky, and they were planning on running away. They had arrived in an old clunker that barely ran, so they needed a new car, and it just so happened the Wendorfs had a fairly new Ford Explorer. They had stopped at a girl's home 10 miles away from the scene. They came in and used the phone. Rod Farrell called over to Heather's to get directions to the house, which turned out to be the murder scene. Then they went into the kitchen and they proceeded to drink some blood.
Rod Farrell fancied himself as a vampire. He had some other kids that they could start doing this half role play, half serious talk, where they're talking about vampires, they're talking about killing, they were believing that they could drink blood, that they could be immortal. Richard Wendorf was targeted because he was the father of Heather Wendorf, who was part of this cult. I think she had said that her life was made hell by her parents, by her father. She said that she had an unhappy childhood with him. She wanted him gone. I don't know that she really understood that her parents would be killed. Whatever Heather had in her mind, we don't know. But what we do know is that Rod Farrell decided to take matters into his own hands.
Rod Farrell not only beat these people to death with a crowbar, he just went into a frenzy to the point where the people were basically unrecognizable.
About 10:30 this evening, all 5 were arrested in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
The group was arrested in Baton Rouge after being on the run for 3 days. And Rod confessed right away. He says, I'll tell you anything you want to know.
Boom, right across the temple of the head. It knocked him cold. And while he was cold, I figured, now or never, because if he gives up, I'm a dead. So I just beat him until he died.
The 4 charged in the incident were Rod Farrell, Scott Anderson, Charity, and Dana. The 2 girls were not there at the homicide, but were well aware of the situation.
All rise, remain standing. Circuit Court of Lake County, Florida, now open in its session.
The state attorney begins his opening remarks. And then he hadn't even started hardly. And one of the defense attorneys says, Your Honor, we need to interrupt because my client may want to change something.
You are Roderick Justin Farrell, sir? Yes. Have you fully discussed this case with your attorneys? Yes, I have. Do you fully understand the plea that you are entering? Yes. Do you understand you are pleading guilty without reservation to armed robbery, armed burglary, murder in the first degree of Richard Wendorf, and murder in the first degree of Naomi Ruth Queen? Yes, I do. The judge will consider the recommendation of the...
He's pleading guilty to all the charges, straight up. There was no negotiated plea. Like if I plead guilty, well, you're going to drop the death penalty.
Back in 1996, it was legal to seek the death penalty for a 17-year-old. The Supreme Court has since changed the rules. There was a decision made early on by my boss that because of the atrocity of the crimes and the lack of remorse and the lack of any justification or provocation, the decision was made that the death penalty would be sought.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant has pled guilty to 2 counts of murder in the first degree as to counts 3 and 4 of the indictment. Consequently, you will not concern yourselves with the question of his guilt. The punishment for these crimes is either death or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Final decision as to what punishment shall be imposed rests solely with the judge of this court. However, the law requires that you, the jury, render to the court an advisory sentence as to what punishment should be imposed upon the defendant.
They adjourn the court for a few days, and we come back for the penalty phase.
What we intend to show you is that these murders were the result of choice. They were the result of a personal decision of a person. That person is Rod Farrell. Remember, you were told last week that a person under 16 years of age who commits a capital crime cannot be put to death in Florida, okay? The evidence is going to show that at the time of this offense, Rod Farrell was about 16 years and 8 months old. What happened to Rod is his world of fantasy mismatched with reality because his life was painful, very painful. You will see that this time, this young 16-year-old boy should be sentenced to life twice with no possibility of parole. Thank you.
This was a case where the death penalty seemed like something that people would impose. but his age was so young. So there was this question, are they going to send this kid to death row?
Rod, he took my kitchen knives and he cut his arm. And Dana went and drank some of his blood.
Today.
The swift determination that Rod Farrell and his teenage followers are the prime suspects immediately changes the nature of this case. It's no longer the grisly beating deaths of a couple in their home. It's much more than that. The fact that all of the members of Farrell's cult claim to be vampires leads to a media firestorm and comparisons to the Manson killings in the 70s.
You put the word vampire in front of anything, and that's going to capture the headlines. I mean, the difference between having a putt-putt mini golf establishment and a vampire putt-putt mini golf, everybody's got to check out the vampire putt-putt mini golf.
This was one of those trials where everybody wanted to be in the courtroom. Who is this kid? How did he get this way? How did he get to be this twisted? And how did he get people to follow him?
The male victim laying right here, face up on the couch. His glasses were mashed up, and the thing that stands out is that his face looked like a hamburger. I looked across the kitchen and saw a female victim laying there. She had what appeared to be a large hole in the back of her head and a pool of blood underneath her head.
Did you come to any conclusion as to whether she was alive or dead?
It was apparent that they were both deceased. They couldn't have lived through that.
There was a lot of personal anger involved in that attack because it was so beyond what was necessary to just knock somebody out or to just kill them. And of course, our first concern was, we have a missing child. Was her life in danger? Was she going to be the next body we found? And then the car's missing. So now we have to figure that the car may be involved in this, either with Heather or with the perpetrators. So first thing, get a bolo out for the car.
Rod, Dana, and Charity and Scott, they came over at about dusk, 5:30, 6 o'clock maybe. And they didn't call anything, they just showed up. And they said something was wrong with their car. Heather was coming with them because they were going to go somewhere. They were going to go to New Orleans. We were all sitting there, and Rod started saying that he was going to go steal the Wendorf's car. And because his car wasn't working, all I said before. And then he said that he wanted to go kill her parents, and I asked him why. And he said because he wanted the car. And then Rod, he took my kitchen knives and he cut his arm. And Dana went and drank some of his blood.
Kids think they're vampires. They're drinking each other's blood. They're doing all this occult stuff. Then you have the daughter of the victims is missing. Was she abducted? Was she part of it? Or is she a victim herself? I mean, nobody really knew.
You didn't take too seriously what Rod was saying, did you, that night?
No,
Okay. You didn't call the police or anything, did you?
I didn't believe him.
Because he basically, he runs his mouth a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, he tells a lot of tales, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Our first big break came about 6 hours in. We got a hit on the tag.
I received a bolo working that day. What was the bolo about?
They described a vehicle, which was a Ford Explorer, blue in color, that was taken from a residence in Florida that had been involved in a double homicide.
And so on the 28th of November, 1996, there in the north parking lot of the Howard Johnson's Hotel, is that the man that you saw standing by the blue Ford Explorer?
Yes.
What they didn't plan for in advance was traveling takes money, living takes money. So when they got over into Louisiana, Charity got the idea that she could call her grandma for money. Fortunately, the grandmother reached back out to the detectives, and ultimately they would be taken into custody without any injury to anyone.
Did you then begin to interview each and every of the 5 subjects that were in custody?
That is correct.
Scott Anderson came from the most dysfunctional family. We're talking poverty, alcohol abuse, mental illness.
What did you go up there for? I thought I'd be able to do something, but... So your intentions were to go up there and assist him in that? Yes. And how were you going to assist? I was going to go after the father and I was going to go after the mother. That was predetermined before you even got up there? Yes.
His problem was that he went with Rod inside the house, and Rod had asked him right before they went in there, do you have a problem with taking these people out? And he said, no, I don't have a problem with that.
Scott went with Rod and entered the home, but froze.
When I saw him make the first blow, I knew I couldn't. Back to her dad and smacked the out of him until he finally quit.
The interview of Rod Farrell was so graphic and so shocking. It was clear to me by the proud and brazen way that he talked about what he had done without any remorse in his voice whatsoever. He seemed to enjoy the experience and probably wanted to kill somebody for the thrill of it.
Keep out of the shadow. That was actually the letter that I just took the crowbar and kept stabbing into her skull. I just continued to beat her until I saw her brains falling on the floor.
To see a 17-year-old with absolutely no conscience was really a difficult thing for me to wrap my head around. Even to this day, 24 years later, I shake my head when I think about that. How do we produce children like that?
Did there come a time that he made any kind of threats towards you?
He said he was going to spread my guts all over the walls so everybody could see them and smell them.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, cold-blooded killer or cop conspiracy. Karen Reed will bring you the latest legal twists and turns in this bizarre case, including new developments surrounding the investigation. Plus, Gareth Pershouse was convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend. Today, he learned how long he'll spend in prison. Our experts break down his sentence and what legal options he has left.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Free quote.
The awful details surrounding the killings of Richard Wendorf and Naomi Ruth Queen in many ways become secondary to the sickening stories of the bloody cult itself. A group of teenagers is charged with these murders, and they claim they're all vampires, led by a 16-year-old named Rod Farrell. Their taste for drinking blood is real, and a ritual they all share.
Stephen Jaden Murphy was Rod's vampire mentor, if you will. In their terminology, he is the sire. Rod would be his prodigy. And what you do is you bring him into the fold by teaching him all the vampire values. There's a whole value system. But Rod, of course, broke all the rules.
Have you ever participated in vampirism?
Yes.
And was it on this basis that you developed your friendship with Mr. Farrell?
The major thing that attracted me to him is he dressed very similar to
myself, and he didn't really fit in with the redneck or prep genre of the school, so he was more or less an outcast as myself.
These kids were not the kids who had it all together in high school. These kids were not the ones who had good grades. They weren't the ones who had good behavior. They were the kids who were left behind. They had difficult family lives. So when they had this sense of belonging, when they had this little group where they could be these vampires, that was exciting.
I've been talking to him about my lifestyle, which I was practicing vampirism. Did not believe that I could fly or that I was immortal, that the sunlight could kill me. I wasn't repelled by crosses or garlic. The strictest definition is I did have a craving for blood, may it be human or animal. I basically told him of our own beliefs and our own laws. I proceeded then, I took out a blade that I had brought from my house, and I cut my arm with it, and he took from me. And the same process happened with him. I had him cut his arm, and I took from him.
I've heard you say now something about lifestyle. Is that what you're talking about? Being a vampire is being about living a certain lifestyle?
Yes, it's not religion.
So you don't have fangs, do you?
No.
If you're a kid and you feel powerless and isolated and alienated and maybe depressed, and now you can latch on to something that makes you feel powerful and that brings with it adulation from others, there's something very seductive and attractive about that.
We were both at that time sort of becoming interested in that sort of realm of things in vampirism, and he was telling me how he had started his own clan called the Jaden Clan, and how he was sired and now he's a vampire. We discussed witchcraft and certain spells and books and things like that.
Rod said that he was Visago, that he was immortal, he was 500 years old. He used his artistic talents to draw all these really disturbing pictures of Christ on the cross, demons, all that sort of thing.
Mr. Farrell told you he was powerful, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he told you that he thought it was funny that he could hurt people, didn't he?
Well, yeah.
Did there come a time that he made any kind of threats towards you?
There was one time he did. He threatened, he, called me names and said he was going to spread my guts all over the walls so everybody could see them and smell them. And I just laughed at him, I thought he was just being crazy,
Kids will often talk big. They'll say things that they never think are really going to happen. And in fact, one of the followers said at one point, we would talk about killing, and it was like a joke. The problem is when kids talk about killing, after a while, it can take a life of its own.
Did Rod ever talk to you about his friends in Florida?
A little bit. I don't know.
Did he ever mention a person by the name of Heather Wendorf or Zoe?
Yes.
And who is Zoe?
She was a very close friend of his in Florida.
Now, are Zoe and Heather the same person?
Yes.
Did you ever talk with Heather?
I believe she called my house once. I just answered the phone and handed it to her.
Did you hear any part of that conversation?
I believe I heard her ask him to come get her.
Okay. And did you hear anything else?
He said he would, and she said that they were hurting her, and he said he'd come get her, and she said, well, the only way I can see you to come, the only way that I can see for you to get me out of here is kill him.
Who said that?
Heather.
Okay, who was she talking about, do you know?
Her parents.
Heather denied vehemently that she had anything to do with this crime.
I remember telling him flat out, don't even go near my parents.
Central to the case and how the suspects are captured so quickly is the role of Heather Wendorf, the teenage daughter of the victims. Did she just fall in with the wrong crowd? Or is Heather a co-conspirator who actually set the murders in motion? Even today, some investigators believe that's exactly what happened.
Did you ever have any contact with a girl named Heather Wendorf?
She called her house several times. I never really talked to her much on the phone, but she wrote us letters, and I read those.
In regards to the letters, do you remember one letter in particular?
Yes. It just basically said that she wanted to get rid of her parents because, you know, she wanted to be with him, and that's the only way she could be with him if she got rid of her parents, and she wanted them gone.
Heather's supposed involvement in murdering her parents. It became a real subject in the community. Heather denied vehemently that she had anything to do with this crime.
I remember telling him flat out, don't even go near my parents.
Why would you tell him not even to go near your parents?
Because he asked me not too long ago if I wanted my parents dead or alive, and I said straight out I wanted them alive.
When did he ask you this?
On Monday after school.
So on Monday after school, he talked to you about killing your parents?
Yes, and I said no. I said I wanted him to leave them alone.
Were you talking to Heather Wendorf?
I was standing there when she was talking to her friends.
When Heather was talking to her friends?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And did you overhear what Heather Wendorf was saying?
That she wanted her parents dead.
Did you happen to overhear a conversation that Miss Wendorf was having in school with some other people?
Yeah.
Would you please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you heard?
I heard her talking amongst friends or whatever. I guess I was like at my locker, and she said what a bad weekend she had. She, you know, was mad at something that her parents would or wouldn't let her do, and she said that she wanted her parents dead.
So why did he kill your parents?
He likes killing people.
Has he killed people before?
He's told me he has. I heard him say that. And he, likes it, but sometimes I just thought he was you know?
Heather's own sister had said that night that she suspected Heather was involved with this.
Your sister and your mother were having a very tumultuous relationship in the fall of 1996. Would that be a fair statement?
I don't know what.
They were having mother and daughter fights.
That's correct.
All right. And Mom would tell her things to do, and she would get pissed off and yell and have a temper tantrum?
Yes.
And on Monday evening, November 25th, 1996, do you recall that you were going to have a meeting that night, a family meeting, where your mom was going to talk to Heather with your dad and try to see if there wasn't some way to get her straightened out?
Yes.
There's several things you've been lying about. You told us you knew nothing about your parents. And now you're telling me that Monday and on numerous other occasions he's brought up to you about wanting to kill your parents. You said no.
I didn't know he killed my parents.
No, you're not listening to what I'm saying.
See, no, I didn't know he killed my parents until he told me, you know?
Okay. You had a pretty good idea of it, though, didn't you?
No.
How many times did he talk to you about killing your parents? Not counting Monday.
Not counting Monday.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can count them, but they're just small things.
My personal opinion, I think she knew. I think she was a part of it, not in the actual physical part of it, but I think she knew what was going to happen, and she let it.
Did she ask you something regarding plotting the death of your mother and father?
Yes.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what she said to you?
I don't quite recall exactly what was said, but I know it was something along the lines of, Jen, have you ever plotted Mom and Dad's death?
And what was your reaction to that?
I was appalled. I said no, and that was the end of the conversation.
Heather was resolute that she never had such a conversation with her sister. that she never had such a conversation with one of the other witnesses. She didn't want her parents killed. She didn't hate her parents. She loved her parents. She loved her sister.
The state attorney, Brad King, says there's no proof that she knew her parents were going to be harmed. Heather said she didn't know her parents were going to be harmed. So basically, the grand jury cut her loose. So she never testified.
Said, question, do you want your parents dead or alive? I said, alive. I don't want you messing with my parents. You leave them alone. I want them alive.
There are members of law enforcement that continue to this day to feel she was involved. And the grand jury did not even find probable cause.
Okay, young lady. Thank you. Take care.
I think she got away with murder. But in the long run, she's the one that's got to live with that. So sometimes living with something like that is punishment too.
His mother had some interesting habits of her own. It didn't make her the mother of the year.
He was cutting himself?
Yes.
And he was engaging in this ritual of drinking blood with others?
Yes.
And you didn't have him hospitalized?
No.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, cold-blooded killer or cop conspiracy. Karen Reed will bring you the latest legal twists and turns in this bizarre case, including new developments surrounding the investigation. Plus, Gareth Pershouse was convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend. Today, he learned how long he'll spend in prison. Our experts break down his sentence and what legal options he has left.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV. Care.
The case against Rod Farrell is overwhelming. There's physical evidence, there's the testimony from his co-defendants, and there's an unrepentant confession. Still a mystery, though. How does Farrell shift from being a wannabe cult leader of teenage vampires to being a premeditated blood-drinking killer who bludgeons to death a man as he sleeps and a woman coming to her husband's aid?
Can you share with us any opinions that you drew from his family history?
This is one of the more dysfunctional family situations that I have experienced, and I indicated that I've evaluated close to 700 individuals charged with first-degree murder.
When you're dealing with juveniles who commit homicide, there are always mitigating factors because healthy, happy, well-adjusted kids don't kill people.
It's clear that Rod has not had the positive male role models in his life that a young man needs. It's real clear that he hasn't had a positive female role model. Sandra Gibson is a very disturbed woman.
I know that this young man came from a troubled background, broken home, etc. His mother had some interesting habits of her own and some issues. It didn't make her the mother of the year.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury your name, please?
Yes, I'm Sandra Joanne Gibson. I'm also known as Star.
She was a very young mother. She was, according to the record, 16 when she gave birth. So a 16-year-old is a child themselves. They're certainly not going to be in the best position to be an effective parent.
And did you use drugs during this time?
Yes.
And were you abusing alcohol?
Yes, I was.
What kind of drugs were you using?
Ecstasy. I did some speed. I did anything I could get, pretty much.
Rod's mother, Sandra Gibson, she got involved in this vampire thing too. She was claiming that she had been raped during an orgy, a vampire type orgy, that she was haunted by a demon.
During this time, did your son have an upside down cross hanging in his room?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And he had his room draped in black?
Yes.
And he was cutting himself?
Yes.
And he was engaging in this ritual of drinking blood with others?
Yes.
And you didn't have him hospitalized?
No.
Tell us about your interview with Sandra Gibson.
She related a day when Rod was about 6 or 7 when his grandfather took him on a fishing trip. And when Rod came home that night, Rod was shaking, was nauseated, throwing up, was extremely upset. And Rod told her that he had been sexually abused by several men out in the woods on this fishing trip.
Rod Farrell was sexually assaulted by his grandfather, a mother who was completely dysfunctional, significant drug use and alcohol use at a very young age. Those are the things now that we are looking with specificity to explain the full story of why Rod got to where he got.
Rod has come from a very deprived background himself, emotionally deprived. I don't mean financially deprived background emotionally. No dad and a mom that's extremely immature. Probably 12 years old on a bright day.
What did the Klan provide him as far as his emotional structure?
Klan met a lot of Rod's needs. And I think the fact that it was a vampire, could have been called anything. The fact that it was vampire Klan was coincidental. It provided him a father figure, and that was the sire. It provided him with structure. It provided him with a family. None of those things did he have.
Can you say within a reasonable degree of certainty whether Mr. Farrell was under the influence of extreme mental or emotional disturbance on November 25th, 1996?
Yes, it's my opinion that he was.
Prosecution's strategy was simple. Shred the psychologist's testimony.
Dr. Myers, in spite of your conclusions about Mr. Farrell's mental health status, he knew right from wrong when he went in that house, didn't he?
I believe he did.
He had the ability to say no when given the choice of killing them or not killing them, didn't he?
I think his ability was impaired.
Was he not thinking when he walked into the Windorf's house and beat them in the head 20 times until they were dead? He was thinking, wasn't he?
He did not tell me what he was thinking at that time.
Did she ever say anything about the fact that her parents would never let her go and she would have to actually get rid of them in order to leave?
Yeah.
The trial of the teenage vampire murders, specifically the case against 16-year-old Rod Farrell, is never really about guilt or innocence. After changing his plea to guilty early in the trial, it all comes down to the sentencing. Will Rod Farrell become one of the youngest people in U.S. history to be sentenced to death?
Ladies and gentlemen, there was a time for mercy in this case. There was a time. It could have been Friday night before they decided to leave Kentucky. Monday night, even as he speaks of these things, there could have been mercy. He could have said, no, I can't do that. I'll get them and run. If I get caught, I get caught. But I'm not going to kill anybody. The time for mercy passed. And there is only, ladies and gentlemen, one penalty that can be exacted when someone has chosen to act so despicably in regards to the rights and lives of other people. And that is to say, Mr. Farrell, by your choices, by your acts, you have forfeited your right to live here on earth.
We don't seek the death penalty in most first-degree murder cases because there typically is some sort of either provocation or some sort of mitigation that is compelling enough that we just don't seek it. But in this case, I agreed with the decision that Mr. King made.
I don't mean in any way to sound flippant, but if this case had occurred 243 days earlier, you wouldn't have to make the grave decision that you're going to make, because the law says that a child of 15 can only be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. We all wish that Rod would have had the common sense and collective judgment to make the right decision, but he didn't. Please make the right decision and recommend to the court that Roderick Farrell be sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
What do we do when there's a horrific crime that's committed and someone so young and so damaged commits it? Do we just throw away the key, or do we give them another opportunity at some point to get past the punishment for what they did?
Mr. Bailiff, I'm advised that the jury has reached an advisory sentence. Is that true, sir?
Yes, Judge.
There will be absolutely no public outburst with the publishing of this sentence. Defendant and counsel will rise.
In the Circuit Court of the 5th Judicial Circuit of the State of Florida in and for Lake County, the State of Florida versus Roderick Justin Farrell, advisory sentence. A majority of the jury, by a vote of 12-0, advise and recommend to the court that it impose the death penalty upon Roderick Farrell.
After the jury came back and said 12-0, they have what they call a censor hearing. The defense then can bring forward anything they think will help their client. The defense put Rod on the stand, and Rod blames Heather.
Now, did you have conversations with Heather Wendorf in the late spring, early summer of '96?
Yes. She would express about the vampirism, her questioning about that, and her basically lust for that lifestyle. Also, she had basically told me that her problems with her family were increasing.
Did she ever tell you that her family was hurting her?
Yes.
Did she ever tell you that she wanted to run away?
There was times when she would actually, she would cry and get hysterical over the phone. And me coming from an abusive life and being around people that have had abuse, like Scott Anderson, my best friend, the symptoms from her crying and her hysteria seemed real. It seemed likely that she really was being abused.
Did she ever say anything about the fact that her parents would never let her go and she would have to actually get rid of them in order to leave?
Yeah.
These cases tend to play out as the water goes from your ankle to your knee to your belly button to your neck. You're looking for someone to either misery loves company, pull into a sinking ship with yourself, or push out of the boat, as the case may be.
What kind of system and what kind of retribution and hate and anger exist out there when a community says, let's kill a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old? Is society in a position to put children to death?
There is genuine evil in this world. There is a dark side and a light side to each and every one of our lives, and those sides compete for human domination. Rod, I say to you, I think you're a disturbed young man. I think your family failed you. I think society failed you. But I also am here to tell you, in the considered judgment of this court, a troubled and disturbed youth cannot serve as an excuse for cold-blooded, premeditated murder, such as you perpetrated on the Wendorfs in this case. It is no wonder the jury unanimously decided to recommend to this court that Roderick Justin Farrell should die for each of his crimes. The court agrees with the jury that in weighing the aggravating circumstances against the mitigating circumstances, the scales of justice tilt unquestionably on the side of death.
When they gave him the death sentence, I think everybody was sighing relief because he would never stop. He had a taste for it. He liked it. And I don't think he would have ever stopped killing. I think he would have become a serial killer.
What happened with Rod is, after he was sentenced to death, the Florida Supreme Court said, nah, we're not going to execute a 16-year-old. So they commuted his sentence to life. Well, then everybody thinks, okay, well, that's it. It's done. Life sentence, no chance of parole, done.
I would hope that in these 20 years that he has made peace with himself. Being that I haven't spoke with him or sat down with him and looked him square in the eye to see what his soul says, I don't know. I can only go by that 16-year-old boy, and I never saw an ounce of compassion.
If evil exists, it lives in the heart of Rod Farrell.
Does he regret it? Yeah, because he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. So he regrets it from that point of view. But does he have remorse? True remorse? Only God knows.
The trial of Rod Farrell played out for a national audience that was riveted by the case. But for those in Central Florida who lived through it, two things are seared in their minds. The killings shattered a sense of safety for the people who call Eustis home. And their quiet community on the lake will forever be associated with the case of the vampire teen murders. I'm Ashley Banfield. Thanks for watching.